everyone, welcome back to Superhero Rewind, the commentary project. I didn't have the other song rigged up right,
I didn't
so
do
that's
the theme.
that's why you didn't hear the theme for the show. My apologies.
Ba-da-ba-ba. Ba-ba-ba.
Never mind, we're gonna do it that way every time from now on.
And he's not afraid. There you go.
Thanks a lot once again for joining us. We're gonna watch another
That
animated.
just lost all the viewers.
We're gonna watch another animated DC superhero movie for you. Maybe next time, Austin, it won't be a DC film. It's been 4 in a row now.
Or this will just be the DC Rewind.
No, I will reveal the movie that we're doing next time right at the end of the show. But right now, we're going to tackle Superman Doomsday, which had this neat lenticular cover.
Oh, that is really nice.
Yeah, I always loved this release, and this was the only, as I understand it, one of these DC direct-to-video features that didn't get some kind of special edition in the first place. Like, they all, after this released with like a 1-disc and then a double disc, and you remember a lot of them would have, like, not a lot of extra features about the movie itself, but they would come with like 3 or 4 episodes of like Justice League or something, just like beef it up.
Oh, okay.
And they'd come with they'd be in different boxes with different box art and stuff. And these days they do a lot of steelbooks and stuff too.
Yeah, I think I've only ever gotten like the main releases of them, and I only own all of the Batmans, and there's like a few outside of that. Like I think I own the first 2 of the New 52 Justice Leagues. I don't own Superman versus the Elite for some reason, or Man of Tomorrow.
Oh wow.
But I have those 2.
Well, you'll have to use this series as an excuse to buy stuff you don't have, like I've been doing some too. Superman Doomsday comes out in 2007, and as a lot of you guys know, is the first movie that I did on the original scripted Superhero Rewind show, and I did a revisited version of that years later that was some 35-40 minutes, I think. So I have said my piece on this movie, but I've never done a commentary on it, so we'll talk about it, and I'll give you any new thoughts I might have, and probably some old thoughts that you've heard from me before as well. And Austin, you had seen this before. Yeah or no?
I hadn't. No, I saw this for the first time last night, and that was very interesting. It was also cool because I only just saw. I haven't seen all of it, far from all of it, but I only started watching Superman the Animated Series around Christmas. I got the Blu-ray for my mom.
Oh yeah, because I showed you the pilot, and that was the first you saw of any of that show.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
We are educating Austin on his extra superhero material beyond just major live-action films.
Well, and you specifically with me and Superman. Like, I didn't see any of the Reeve movies until I met you, and you and I watched the first one together, not on camera.
That was really fun, though. Mm-hmm. Just getting your initial reactions to the Donner Superman movie. I never got to do that with anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to see those for the first time after we met. We did some episodes like Superboy and Lois and Clark when we were doing the Primetime Crisis.
That's true, yeah. You and I have a long history with Superman now.
Yeah.
And specifically introducing you to stuff.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, strap in, because now we're going to talk about probably nobody's favorite Superman piece of extra media. It might be somebody's. I've not met that person. This is, of course, a very loose adaptation of the Death of Superman storyline. It is now in its 30th anniversary, Austin, the original Death of Superman story, 1993. And so I guess this is our tribute to that for the 30th anniversary. I'll try to do something else on the channel later this year on Death of Superman, so we can cover maybe some somewhat more I don't know, more quality material. Just getting my feelings, I guess, already out. This is not great, although I think I just had the best watch of it I've ever had. I thought of some things that either I've never thought of before, where it's been so long it was like the first time.
Yeah, I was also warned by Jason about this. It was around when he messaged me about that AI thing. He was like, "Oh, you're doing Superman Doomsday. That's not a good movie."
He would not watch it with me today. I tried to get him to watch it with me, and he wouldn't do it. Okay, so if you want to watch it with us, and we encourage you to do that, pull out your DVD, your Blu-ray, however you want to watch it. I think it is still available on Max, formerly HBO Max, and get it past any menus to timestamp 0. Get ready to press play. When I say now, my version has a Warner's, like a blue Warner Premiere logo right at the start. So that's what you should be looking at.
Okay, yeah, mine does too, yeah.
Yours does too. Okay, good. And if you are just listening to this like a podcast, we'll do our level best to give you some context for whatever we're talking about as we watch through. So you should be able to theoretically listen to this just fine without watching it with us as well, as long as you've seen the film before. Of course, we suggest everybody watch the thing once. And get ready to press play when I say now. Is everybody ready? Austin, are you ready?
I am.
All right, here we go. Everybody, please press play right now.
Noah in the comments says Superman versus the Elite is still the best Superman animated film.
A lot of people feel that way.
I think at this point it might be Man of Tomorrow for me, but I have to rewatch it.
I think Man of Tomorrow is a little bit more to my taste, just to my sensibilities, but Elite is really good too. I haven't seen it in a very long time though.
Those are the two big ones though.
So if you didn't pay any attention when you bought this and you put it in your player and you didn't know who the voices were, if you were familiar at all with James Marsters, you might be shockingly taken out right at the beginning that we've got a narration from Spike, but not with a British accent.
Yeah, so I went into this knowing, okay, it's basically the animated series animation style. So surely it's everybody from the animated series they brought over for this. And it's basically...
Oh, you thought they didn't change the voices?
I thought it was the animated series voices, yeah.
No, that would have confused the thing even a lot more. It was certainly smart to not do that.
Mm-hmm. When I don't know that show well enough to have known that it was it couldn't have been connected in any way, but it was very jarring because I think well, especially because it's already basically that animation style, like it's sort of different but like not enough, I think.
No, I'm with you. The models get further and further away with these different movies, and of course, these are all mostly in different continuities. It's going to be a long time before we get a shared universe. I say a long time. I guess it's, 13, 14 we start doing wherever Flashpoint Paradox is.
I think 13
is when we start doing that.
Maybe 12.
The opening credits here are strange because this is supposed to be space, but I can't help until we see the Earth but think snow.
See, I thought it was awkward for a different reason, which is that with both the credits and the music, it's like the Donner movie, but in no way epic.
Yeah, that's true. I don't mind this theme for Superman. I don't care for how it's used in places, particularly when, I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but particularly when, and I kid you not, the production refers to him as Dark Superman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the...
It's in the subtitles. Bruce Timm refers to him that way in his commentary. The clone of Superman here that is condensing the four Supermen from Reign of the Superman is Dark Superman. Anyway, when he shows up, I feel like the soundtrack should be a little bit more mysterious. Like, who is this guy? A little more ominous, not as endearing, and it just goes right back to the rah-rah, rousing Superman theme. But that's what I don't like about that.
I didn't have that, but I didn't really think about it. Like, the score itself didn't really jump out to me. It was, it's whatever, I don't know. I feel like Superman is yet to have a theme as good as the John Williams music. So, like, most of the Superman music I've heard, I just kind of go, Like, I don't even really like the animated series theme.
Oh, Hayden Spring has not seen this. He says, "Wait, there's not all four? That's dumb." Oh, there's none of them. They're all roped into what is essentially your standard kind of modern Bizarro plot.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's almost weird we didn't make him more bizarro-y, especially by the end.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that because I think there's a potential. There would have been a potential way to maybe win me over on that the evil Superman by the end and not make it like Bizarro. But I want to talk about that more when we get there. Let's stay surface for a minute and just talk more visuals. When you say that the character models are still too close to the animated series. I agree with that. And
Except
one of
for
the ways that they're trying
Superman.
to depart from that is simply put a lot of lines on people's faces.
It's really weird because they don't really do that with Lois. So Superman looks like he's like 50,
He just looks elderly.
And Lois is like 20. So
I
it
don't know if
makes
they
a lot
think
of
that
their scenes uncomfortable.
somehow makes it a little bit more realistic or something, where it's like, well, they're still going to be really angular, but the lines will give it more dimension or
I think it's
depth or
that.
something.
I think it's that, and maybe they're trying to say that like he's a little bit older because we're doing Death of Superman. But like I said, it is only really on Superman himself.
Okay, but then I would counter you by saying, how old should he be if he and Lois are just now, like cultivating a relationship
That is true too, but
and
like
maybe eventually going to get married?
but I think it's its own thing. Like it's fine if they're a little bit older when that's happening.
Sure, but I don't think she. To your point, I don't think she looks as old as he does.
No, and like I said, I think he looks 50 and she looks like she could be in her mid 20s, and it's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable.
So, uh, so I gotta say that one of the things that always put me off with this movie, and this is kind of to no fault of its own, for the most part, is just except just the choice to adapt this outside of any kind of continuity. It's very strange to introduce a version of Superman in the first place to adapt Death of Superman. It's very weird to
And it's
do.
weird because no one
This is a
involved.
standalone thing, but real quick,
Yeah,
but it also almost happened in live action, so I'll give
that's
them
true.
that there was interest in that, and people were always curious to know what Superman Lives would have been like. So there was kind of an understandable reason that maybe there would be interest in this even as its own standalone thing. But it's really counterintuitive to me, just because I feel like you'd want pre-established characters who are all these people before you then kill Superman and show us why the world needs him.
Mhm. And I think that was part of why I assumed like maybe this could be part of like animated series adjacent going into it.
That
Uh,
always was super awkward to me. And then the idea that Superman and Lois, or that like Lois doesn't know that Superman is Clark yet, or she suspects it, but he's not actually told her yet. All of that just made it really awkward to me, as like a fan of the source material and just Superman in general, because it's so weird to do this with this particular status quo. But also, I've never seen a status quo with Superman where they're dating, but she doesn't know that he's Clark. So, and I'm not dismissing it outright as just a bad idea. It simply got me off on the wrong foot with it, because there's all these like really awkward, counterintuitive starting points.
well, and that is
While
the
I know
thing,
we're
and-
about to get to Doomsday, so like my head kind of explodes, and so like I
that is
wanted
the
to get
thing
in
in
front of this
All-Star.
and say I don't know how to look at this, like without my biases and my expectations, and apart from my knowledge of the source material. So like it's not bad because they didn't just straight up adapt, you know, like full on the 3-year story in 70 minutes of Death of Superman. You would have to change some things, and telling a totally different story with that as your premise isn't even a bad idea in the first place. It's just all like weird and off-putting initially, and it never quite wins me over.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, the Superman dating Lois thing, like that's how it is in All Star, which is also one of the early movies. So maybe that's what they were looking at. A thing here, so that scene we just got.
All Star's like 4 or 5 years in.
Hmm? Yeah. Oh, is that not as early as I'm thinking it is?
I mean, just when you said early, like it's not super early.
I thought it was like within like the first like 5.
Yeah.
Is it not?
The first 5 movies, no.
Oh, okay. So I'm thinking it's earlier than it actually is then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my bad on
I
that
think.
then. Yeah.
I mean, I'm
I don't
rusty,
know the history
but
of these super well.
Matthew Bass, the lines of Superman's face are really bothering me. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had that too.
But so with that scene with Lois and Clark that we just got,
Yeah.
or with Superman and Lois, this movie reminds me of Ren and Stimpy, which sounds weird, but we're getting there. Trust me. So, Ren and Stimpy, of course, is a show that is like very adult, but it like played within like the rules of kids animation, and then they come back later with the MTV show where they remove all of those restrictions, and it's like god awful. And this is the MTV Ren and Stimpy of animated series, and there's so many just like weirdly like perverted stuff because a lot of that is in the DCAU, but like we can go farther with it.
Yeah.
And like
it's a little more subtle. It's few and far between.
Like I don't think there's like any other reason that we get Superman and Lois having the implication of they just had sex like 10 minutes into their first movie now that those restrictions are gone.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, there's like violence and language and stuff that it's not an issue that it's there. It's all how it's played. Like there's a moment later on where Perry's drinking, and it's the fact that they like stop and go, look, a cartoon is drinking.
That was my big example with the first rewind. Yeah.
Like that's what makes it awkward.
Yep.
It's that it keeps stopping and going, can you believe that we did this? And I'm like, I don't really care that you did it. It's the fact that it's in my face is what makes it annoying.
So folks in the comments are saying Bruce Timm is better reined in. That is true. I'm going to take up for him a little bit with this, in saying that he had the opposite problem with this movie and with some of these early ones after this that he had on television. So on TV, it was standards and practices, censorship, telling him what he couldn't do. And with this, the home video department of Warner's hired them to make specifically a movie for adults. And they couldn't pitch something that didn't sound too much like just what they were making before. And it sounds like kind of frustrating on Bruce Timm's part was it's kind of ironic, right? They pushed a lot of envelopes with what they could get away with the DCAU, and then you get to this, and anything he wants to pitch is like, well, you could have just done that on your old show. It's like, well, yeah, because we pushed things really far, and we were able to get away with quite a bit on those shows. Now we got to go, like, gratuitously, obviously in your face about it to even get the PG-13 rating, which was, I think the idea was kind of, kids have grown up with superheroes and with the Timmverse, and now that he's going to be making things that aren't in that continuity, but probably now for like late 20s, early 30-somethings that or maybe mid 20s, guys that grew up, kids that grew up with that stuff, we've got to appeal to the the adult sensibilities and make it more rough and tumble and stuff. So he didn't want to do Death of Superman at all. And I think that really shows in the movie. And then they pitched like 3 or 4 different things, and the home video department said it's just not, it's not adult enough, it's not rough enough. So finally they started, the way he tells the story is, we started talking it out, like, what if we actually did it, and then it just became the thing that we ended up doing. I think it was more begrudging than that, maybe. But then, even as they're making it, they have to keep shoehorning in and contriving ways to make it adult enough to appease the home video department. So it was almost like reverse censorship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I was going to mention the fact that they clearly didn't want to make this, in that I mean, it's no different than if they went to Nightfall first, right? Like,
Yeah.
they clearly had no interest in this period, and it's so weird that it ends up being the first thing. Especially because I think there was like a lot of fight even putting Doomsday. I always flip the two.
Doomsday.
I do that constantly. I'm really bad for that. It's like you with Deadpool and Daredevil.
Oh, I used to be the worst at that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like, I think there was a lot of fight even putting Doomsday in the DCAU, because I don't think it shows up until Justice League.
No, and he's handled in a very different kind of counterintuitive way, just because Bruce Timm didn't want to just straight up do Death of Superman. So like, it's like in that show, he shows up and he's very intelligent, and then he gets lobotomized.
Damn, that's more adult than anything in this.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, okay, so with the adult thing too, it's very
superficial.
There's a part where Lex Luthor guns down Mercy in his office.
Yes.
And it's so just like in your face, like, look how shocking this is. But it's really stupid, and like, you could have had him kill her in a smarter way, and it would have been just as adult, and it wouldn't have been as in my face, like, look what we can get away with now.
Yeah. But again, it wasn't so much look what we can get away with as how do we make it adult enough for the people that wanted that asked us to make this and want it to be really adult. And that example is specifically brought up in the commentary that Bruce Timm and Andrea Romano and some of the other people that worked on this did. That's on the DVD, where he says, "Yeah, we just shoved in the Mercy death so that we could make it feel more shocking. I mean, that's the only reason that's there."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just think about like how you could make that more natural. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'm with you.
I think part of the issue is that he does it in the middle of his office. Like, it's really awkward.
And why now over any other time? Because she's probably covered up other things.
Mm-hmm. And it would have made more sense if it was like they were like driving somewhere or something, or like she was in a car and maybe he blew her car up or something.
Yeah, or hired someone to kill her.
Yeah, you could have done that. Yeah.
The defense that Bruce Timm does give of that, I mean, he does admit that it was just to have a really violent thing happen right then.
Yeah.
And it's not like Lex isn't already like ruthless enough without that, right? I mean, like, this is a really super over-the-top, ruthless, will kill anyone for any reason kind of Lex Luthor. But his defense of it is, well, Lex is in, like, this kind of weird grieving process because he didn't get to kill Superman. Mm-hmm. And so he's taking it out on anybody that's around him. So he didn't actually kill her because he's tying up loose ends. He did it because he's like looking for any release right then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does make sense.
But it plays gratuitous.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And and there's certain things like we had Doomsday, a few minutes ago, stop and kill a deer randomly.
Yeah, just because, like you said, here's the thing we couldn't do on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
And that maybe will be rough enough for the anti-censors.
And I think Doomsday holding that guy when he snaps his neck wouldn't feel like that if it weren't surrounded by like 8 million other examples of it.
So I really like the choice to have Superman try to freeze Doomsday when they first fight. Like the very first thing he does is just freeze him in his tracks and hope that maybe that'll stop him. First of all, we don't do freeze breath enough in Superman stuff. And second of all, it's a really good, like, reactionary, non-violent choice at the start with something that is this dangerous and causing this much havoc. I like that he's smart about the battle in the first place, and then it all goes downhill from there. Mm-hmm. Because there is like Man of Steel plus levels of collateral damage. Bruce Timm all over the commentary just keeps saying over and over again, "Don't worry, there was no one in those buildings."
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And by the way, that's not him in denial. He criticizes his own movie constantly in that, and you can tell that he knows it's not his best work, and that he didn't, like we said earlier, really want to be there. So, he's proud of some stuff in it, but it's all superficial kind of action stuff, where it's like, here are things that we did in Justice League that we were able to go further with here, both in production value and in violence. And that's what was fun about it for him. Actually, adapting this story was not interesting to him, all the way down to, well, Superman can't actually die. He's got to be in some kind of stasis thing. We've got to find a way to make more sense than it did in the books, which is understandable because it was confusing and
it makes sense for a movie to
very
do something
convoluted.
like that.
Yeah, and at least it's not called Death of Superman.
Yeah, no, that is true too.
But the title they picked also is not very indicative of the movie, because you have the same thing in Death of Superman where the fight with Doomsday is the first act. And then the second act is World Without Superman plus Reign of the Superman, and the third act is Return of Superman. So it really shouldn't be called that either, unless the idea is like it's double entendre. The Doomsday is, yes, he's called Doomsday, and by the way, the way they get to the Doomsday name is not obnoxious, so like I appreciate that. But then maybe the idea is he creates like a larger Doomsday in the, evil Superman coming from that whole thing, but it's not a good title, and it's very generic.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about this later, but I actually have an idea of a way they could have made that title make a lot more sense, and also like be more relevant, and also make this Superman, the Dark Superman, cool. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll try not to forget.
So I think most of the action in this is really boring. I like this little bit with the helicopter. I need more of that with this fight, I think, is part of the issue. Like, so much of it is
and
just
with the Superman in general, because you need more contrast with Dark Superman. He needs to be flying around saving people more.
Well, and yeah, no, absolutely. But I think it gives it more stakes because A, we know Superman's going to die, and B, like, it's just Superman and Doomsday punching each other around until we decide, okay, now this is the moment they both die. I feel like I need.
That's right.
I feel like I need this to be more like the Spectacular Spider-Man Venom fights, where it's like, look how big the action is, but we also typically have other things going on, which is why I like the helicopter part, where they're like fighting around this helicopter.
It's all so empty. I mean, part of the problem is no one is living in this city.
Exactly, and it's entirely there for spectacle, but it's just kind of like empty spectacle. Like it's not interesting, I don't think. Or
and
like
it also feels obligatory because it's like, it almost feels like we've already been here and done this a million times in extra media, even though we haven't really. But it's sort of like, well, this is a popular story, we have to adapt it finally. And I guess what I mean is it feels too informed by the popularity of the material, if that makes any sense. Like, they're struggling to make this feel like an event. When I was a kid and I read Death of Superman, like Metropolis crumbling around Superman while he's fighting Doomsday. He's trying really hard to save everybody that he can around it. His like perpetually getting like more roughed up and in worse shape as it goes along. It all felt like an event. It felt like the world will never be the same after this. It was a 9/11 level kind of feeling while you're reading it. It was a disaster sort of story. And this just feels like another big monster fight with a whole lot of damage where at the end we'll pull a light switch and Superman is dead.
Yeah, and I feel like this fight is like watching a Injustice fight where they only use their super moves and the like stage transitions, you know?
That's great.
Where like that's
You're
all
absolutely right. All the way down to because Superman Is it Superman or Supergirl that has the super move of flying all the way into space and coming all the way back down to the ground?
I think both of them
Or
have it, but in
Zod?
different games. I think Superman has it in the first one, and she has it in the second, maybe.
But that is a Kryptonian move. That's hilarious. And
Yeah,
that was
that's
always
just-
my biggest complaint with this movie, which I brought up in the original Rewind. And they talk about it really tongue-in-cheek in the commentary. The idea that Superman would fly Doomsday out into space, and then the only thing they could come up with that seems cinematic enough, Bruce Timm says, is for him to bring Doomsday back down to the ground and just slam him, and there's a giant shockwave. And he said we couldn't do it like the comics because it just wouldn't play in a moving picture to have both of them hit each other really hard and both fall down. And I'm like, I understand the challenge of that, but I also think you could have gotten it there. If only it felt like they were both like taking a huge beating all the way through. Like there are places where Superman is like breathing really heavily and you can tell that it's kind of difficult in the moment, but I don't see the degradation, the you know, like the progression, the evolution of you know, his kind of falling apart at Doomsday's hands. And the same thing should kind of be happening with Doomsday.
Yeah, if we just got the blood with Superman, but we maybe could have ripped his costume throughout this fight too.
Well, and that's also a thing that doesn't make any sense, and I was going to mention that. His costume has not been ripped up. When he comes back down, it will be. But
Yeah, well,
they're
they
not
hit so
fighting in
hard.
space, so he loses his cape because he slams Doomsday into the ground, and part of his outfit gets ripped because he brought Doomsday to the ground.
And Superman, if you're gonna do this, don't do it in the middle of Metropolis.
And that's the big thing I said in the first video I did about this, where I'm like, you're in space, you literally could go anywhere on the planet within sight.
Yeah, you could throw him at the moon and then just fly back to Metropolis.
And again, that's where Bruce Timm was being real tongue-in-cheek in the commentary, where he goes, well, he just picked like the deserted part of the city. And I just don't understand, like, you know, he thinks it's funny, he's not taking it very seriously, but
Yeah.
it's a movie that certainly wants to be taken seriously to some degree. So they're just going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly.
AMC, I do really like the empathy for the innocent child that gave Superman the strength to pull off that final move. My problem with it is, where are the kids' parents?
I just want more of that. Like,
And
I
there's
want more
hardly
of
anybody in this
Superman
city, but then there's
help
just this
people.
little kid standing, and it's so contrived.
I just think there would be so much more stakes during that fight if there was like a constant threat of Doomsday about to kill people, and Superman has to both fight this thing that he can't beat and like help the people around him. I
It's
feel like it
it's
would make it a
token.
way better action scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why the only bit that works for me is the helicopter bit, is because that's what they're doing.
So, of course, you've got the their version of the end of Superman 75, where Superman has died in Lois's arms, and again, there's just like nobody there.
There's like three people, not exactly T-posing, but not far off in the background.
I don't understand why, if they're gonna give us the iconic shattered cape shot, they didn't have it in the background of that shot.
It's weird that you get the cape thing for about a second and then it flies away.
Matthew Bass,
It feels obligatory.
just throw them into space. Don't crash them into a populated area. Yes, exactly.
Throw them into the sun.
Okay, Austin, should I... So now we're into the second act. Oh, by the way, I should mention, because I learned this today. I didn't know this, but listening to that commentary, this movie has 3 different directors listed. And the reason is because the way they divvied up the labor is each of the directors did a different
An
act
act?
of the film.
Okay.
And Bruce Timm does the third act.
Interesting.
But he doesn't storyboard more than like half of his part, because he said, you know, I'm getting old enough now that I can have other people do that for me. And I don't mean to spend the whole time just talking about somebody else's commentary. Austin, should should we talk about Superman's character arc and some thematic stuff now, or do you want me to talk about what I think the ending of this movie should have been?
I'm good with whichever you want to do. What are we going for?
Okay, so I don't know, we're watching the movie and now I'm distracted by things. Let's talk about Jimmy Olsen for a second. Damon Swank might as well be called like Tom Sleazebag.
The Jimmy Olsen thing feels like we just went, Jimmy Olsen should probably have something to do in this movie. I don't know. This, I guess.
So a lot of things. So yeah, he is lashing out because Superman has died, and he does this kind of goofy, rebellious thing. What's weird is he continues on that path even after he thinks Superman has come back to life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And
Jimmy's, I don't know. I don't know that he really gets enough to do with Superman before this to really hammer home the Superman's best friend thing.
That's the problem even with Lois, right? Is you're kind of expected to care because you're already familiar with these characters more broadly.
And at least they got like an implication that they've slept together and like a scene. Superman and Jimmy don't really get like a scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I agree we could have developed the Lois thing better, but it's the Jimmy Olsen one's not developed in any way, I don't think.
That's a really good point. They just don't have screen time together.
And part of it too with me with Lois is that so I don't really like anyone in this voice cast. Lois is probably the best because I think she handles all the lost stuff really well. And I think there's moments where she's talking about that where I think she shines in a way that no one else does in this movie. So maybe like it works for me better because I think the actress is making up for it too.
Yeah, I understand that. I think there are places where she's great and other places where she's super awkward.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
and that's particularly in this scene with Martha Kent. But it's not her fault. It's kind of the dialogue goes too far in a melodramatic or cliche direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Like I think she's the best one, but absolutely, there's moments that she's not good, and I don't blame her. Like this is not a great movie in general, but I think there's moments where she kind of shines outside of that. It goes hit or miss. While I think everybody else is just kind of lame.
I think the choice of voice for Superman is just kind of out there.
Yeah,
not the first person that I would have thought of. I like Adam Baldwin in stuff, but like, see, and I remember when this came out, even thinking that like, that's gonna be your Superman. Okay,
it's real weird.
His Superman is better than his Clark.
Yeah, I think there's moments like there's like a line here or there where I go, okay, I can kind of hear it, but for the most part, I don't think he works at all.
I have the same thing. I think he's maybe cast because Romano thought that he could do the dark stuff okay. And
I thought so too.
And I think that's actually true. I think once he's playing this like cold and emotionless character, mm-hmm. I'm seeing the casting more.
Yeah. I had the same thing where I went, okay, he was just cast because he can be Dark Superman, right?
Yeah, but like you're supposed to contrast it with, altruistic, does no wrong Superman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So it's very strange. Marsters with Lex, I'm really mixed on because I like with a lot of things with this movie, I love it on paper. It sounds like a great idea. And like you said with Baldwin, there are places where there's like flashes of, oh, this is the performance you thought you'd get if only the script was better. But the problem is he's just way too over the top, the way he's written, and it doesn't earn that. Like I've seen Lex Luthors that are bombastic and crazy like this, mm-hmm. but it's kind of trying too hard with that stuff. And then once you get to things like, who's your daddy and all of that, I'm out. Like I'm just you've completely lost me at this point. That's not Marster's fault.
with Lex initially, there's like an awkwardness that I went from Clancy Brown to not Clancy Brown.
Sure.
But even then, I don't think he works almost at all. And there's like that constant like running thing where he does the, I don't know if it's like monologuing to himself. It's like his inner monologue where he goes like Superman. And the entire movie, I was
What's weird
like,
is it's not, well, he bookends with voiceover, but that bit where he goes up to the clone, or not to the clone, to the corpse of Superman that he's stolen, and he just dumps all this exposition on the audience where he's just talking to himself for no reason, like, I took your body and I took blood from you and I cloned you. That's lazy. That's just super lazy writing.
mm-hmm. No, it starts to become that Nicolas Cage film we watched, The Family Man, where
Yes.
it's just dialogue that's like, hey, I am this person to you, and this is how we are connected, and this is, you know what I mean? Where it's just like explaining.
Here's that weird Mercy kill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't a Mercy killing. He killed Mercy. It's different.
Yeah.
And I like the kind of, neo-noir, like almost Frank Miller shot.
I like the shot.
It looks cool, but it's just out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. No, it's real dumb. Well, oh yeah, so he does that like Superman thing the entire time, and it was killing me. I was like, what is that? Because like there's something there that he's channeling, and I don't know what it is. And it finally hit me today while I was at work.
Is it Ursa from Superman 2?
It's the climax of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Oh,
where the main villain runs around going, "I am Superman."
Oh yeah.
And I was like, why?
So a lot of people, I'll get to some other points I wanted to make a little bit later. Let's talk in scene some. So
Yeah.
A lot of people really like this kind of twisted, more like quote unquote realistic take on Toyman, and he's clearly played as, like, for lack of any better way to put it, kind of a pedophile without coming right out and saying that or showing it. And I think it works. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Toyman. Like, that's not a Superman villain I'm super familiar with, but I thought he was one of the better aspects of this movie.
Yeah, they've totally reinvented it.
I assumed that. I assumed he wasn't like this, like he wasn't as dark.
What's distracting about it is it's just DiMaggio kind of doing Bender. It's very distracting.
Well, and John DiMaggio has like one voice.
No, DiMaggio has like three voices, but I can always tell it's him.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I love John DiMaggio.
Hey, his Joker doesn't sound like this.
There's elements of it.
Do you think? Okay.
No, John DiMaggio is a voice actor where you can always tell it's him, but I love him anyways. It's like a high-pitched Bender.
What I like about this, and I don't know if it's intentional, is that it's kind of this sort of meta commentary of this is not for kids anymore, and there's not a good enough reason that it has to be like this, and we've kind of already talked about that a little bit, but I think there's maybe this sort of idea intrinsic in it of we've made Toyman like as scary and disturbing as possible because that's what this whole thing is supposed to be, and he's like your toys not being what they used to be. Like, you've grown up now, but you're still playing with all the same toys, so we're making those toys for you as an adult now, and this is what you get when you do that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think we're coming up to like the biggest eye roll I had with this movie, with
the Kevin Smith cameo.
The Kevin Smith cameo.
So
yeah.
I love the idea of the Kevin Smith cameo. I'm just gonna keep saying this over and over again. Here's an idea I love. It doesn't work. I like that they did it. The line is dumb.
Yeah, it's also a giant ant. It's not a giant.
Oh, it's not really a spider.
That was my thing.
I didn't even think of that. You're right. It's not really a spider.
It's got 8 legs like a spider, but it's an ant. And when he said it, I was like, "What?"
Yeah, what's cool about it is it's a shoehorned in cameo, but it's a really like kind of deep pull in '07. Most people have not heard that story yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not as cringy as it would be now.
Yeah, about John Peters like forcing in a giant mechanical spider in the third act of Kevin Smith's Superman Lives script. And what's nice is it's at least like relevant to the material. That like, well, they did a Superman Lives reference. I'm not gonna begrudge them coming up with some kind of way to reference Superman Lives. That would have been 10 years after that was supposed to come out, or at least after it started to be in development.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I don't begrudge them doing it. I don't know, it just like hit me the wrong way. I rolled my eyes when it happened. And I think you're right. I think it is just an execution. And like I said, it's not a spider; it's an ant.
Part of the problem with this whole thing, let me just reel things back a little bit, is I don't know whether you're familiar with Death of Superman or not. I don't know who is gonna actually be what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know who's actually gonna buy into the misdirection that they're doing with certain things with this movie, right? Like, you're supposed to think that the clone is really Superman, or could be actually Superman for a particular period of time, but how lame would it be if that was actually what was going on? If you killed Superman and then 5 seconds later he comes out of the grave, and like, what is the rest of that movie? Mm-hmm. It's like, how are we supposed to buy the misdirection?
Mm-hmm. I also think it's a cheat that we get the shot of him like bursting out of the grave. And I get that, like, the idea is that he like went underground and got the actual dead Superman, but I think like the way we see it is a cheat.
Yeah, so that we'll act well, and that was shoehorned in retroactively, and Bruce Timm talks about that, where like they wanted to figure out a way where you would actually believe for a minute that he came out of that grave, and there's no real reason that I was going to say there's no reason the clone had to do that. I guess it kind of makes sense, because then everybody will believe that that's the reason it's empty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's awkward.
Let me go ahead and read Super Chat. Sorry about that, Josh. Yeah. He said we just answered his Super Chat. He left a $10 Super Chat earlier, and we were just getting so hip deep in this, I had not gotten to them yet. But thanks a lot, Josh. Appreciate you, buddy. He says, did you guys talk about the Superman Lives references in this movie? No, but we just did, and you heard it.
You heard it here first, folks.
Tom had a $2 Super Chat and said he was counting earlier. What were we talking about? When you were talking about All-Star Superman, and he said that it was the 10th movie they made. See, I knew it wasn't very early.
Oh, okay. I said 5. It's 10.
Tom, $5 Super Chat. No one in the building. We just had a scene with people looking out the windows. Were they mannequins?
They're all clones.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy when he said that, but he's just joking because he knows it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was probably being tongue-in-cheek.
I've always appreciated his honesty with that stuff. Like, there's a certain degree of, I mean, we're making cartoons, like in his attitude, which I think sometimes serves him and sometimes doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to take yourself too seriously, but at the same time, you don't want to use it as an excuse to just skirt around, logic.
You don't want it to be the ultimate Spider-Man thing, right? Where everyone went, it's motivation for kids. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And overall, those guys, him, Burnett, et cetera, like, those guys are way above that. I mean, they're making stuff that is, until they get to this, that, mostly kids are watching, but the reason Batman the Animated Series, et cetera, is so beloved is because they're making it for themselves first. Mm-hmm. And they're going, we want to tell a good story that we would find compelling ourselves. And that's why it works. Mm-hmm. This felt like an assignment, because it was. We should talk about the scene we just saw with Superman, or with Lex beating up Dark Superman, where he's cloned Superman so that he can abuse him because he's upset that Doomsday took that away from him.
Yeah. And he can be like, Superman, I have read solar rays, Superman.
I kind of like that idea if the point was to try to make the Superman clone more sympathetic to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Where he didn't ask to be born, he didn't ask for any of this. He's like doing his best to protect Metropolis, and he's gonna be misguided and not have Superman's morality, really, partly because he was cloned by Lex Luthor, which is kind of interesting. Like, just inherently he can't be Superman because Lex made him as badly as like he wants to actually save the city, be the hero of the story, all of that. And it's just the story, the script doesn't take him far enough in a sympathetic direction. Like, he could do all the awful things he does in this and make me really feel for him, and I just ultimately don't.
Mm-hmm. You maybe could have done something interesting, because you have like the Vat, not Vat, but like all of the different Superman clones in the third act.
Yeah.
You could have maybe done something interesting, and it's changing the movie completely, but
yeah, exactly.
Where he like keeps killing Superman over and over.
That's cool.
Again.
Well, see, this is one of those movies where it's hard not to do that because it's just not. Sorry, I'm distracted because that scene is really weird when Lex walks in and he's talking to the original Superman body, and he says, "Did you save any lives today?" Mm-hmm. Because for a second I'm thinking he's talking to the clone, but he's not talking to the clone, and I don't understand why he said that.
I think it's just he's being sarcastic.
Yeah, I guess, but it's like, awkward when he has a clone of Superman that is going out saving people.
That's just Lex to me in this movie.
It's
he's
very
always
awkward.
awkward.
But yeah, the story is ultimately, especially by the third act, really uninspired, so it's really hard not to just use your imagination or let it go wild with more interesting things it could do. The way I would have maybe, again, I always hesitate just rewriting the movie, but like, it's called Superman Doomsday, right?
Yeah.
What if you bookended it with a second Doomsday fight at the end? What if Lex is using Doomsday as like part of his cloning apparatus, where he's like taking parts of Doomsday and parts of Superman, and that's how he's making his clones? Or if he's just holding Doomsday back on ice to maybe try to use him later for something, and then
Dark Superman becomes Doomsday, like he like morphs.
Well, I'm going a different place, but yeah, you could do that too. But what I was going to say is, what if, and by the way, we're only like 45 minutes in the movie, and Superman's already alive.
Yep.
He's already awake. Oh, okay.
He's back.
Like, that's kind of lame.
Got a Rocky training montage for the rest of the film.
But he's got his mullet, so we're giving the fans what they really want, that love the source material, Like, it's cool he's got the long hair, but who cares? He didn't actually die. It's not really... And again, I don't want to be fanboyish about it, where it's like, oh, you have to adapt every part of it. Like, why even bother? It's not really Death of Superman at all.
Well, I guess the fact that he didn't die makes more sense for why his hair grew. Although, I think his hair is long before that in the comics, isn't it?
I think so. But yeah, I do like the idea that he just hasn't cut his hair in a long time. That's kind of a fun idea. And there's a character arc that he's going through in having a near-death experience that I'll talk about a little bit later that I like now more than I have before, I think. But what I wanted to mention about the third, what I would maybe do with the third act, Austin, is you somehow have Doomsday show back up, you bookend it with a big Doomsday fight, and instead of a huge showdown with Superman and the dark, misguided Superman, you have a big team up between them, where they have to take down Doomsday together, and then the darker Superman learns what being Superman is really all about. You know, Superman has that that kind of repeated thematic line throughout the movie where he says, "This is what I'm here for," and that arc is all about his really coming to appreciate himself as a protector rather than a god or a savior. Like, there's a big distinction made between them, and that's, I guess I'll say this real quick, or say this now, that's the big thing, that thematic idea I actually really like in this, that I don't think I ever quite appreciated before, is Superman versus Lex. At the beginning of the movie, they are both trying to cure major diseases, and Lex is trying to find the way to most capitalize on it. So, like, he's found a cure for AIDS and other major diseases, and he's going to stretch that out forever instead of giving everybody the cure now, because he's going to maximize his profits that way and make people see him as a god. Meanwhile, Superman is not doing as well with his research in just the Fortress of Solitude, trying to cure major diseases, and he just wants to help people more than just reacting. But his arc is about learning that his job is really setting the example and also saving the world from the existential threats that they really can't save themselves from just in being better people. And if he's not a human being first, if he's not a man first, he's risking turning into something like Dark Superman. And so that's the whole point of the Lois subplot, that, like, he's distancing himself from her, he's acting more like a god in a sense there than a man who just wants a life, and what he really should do is tell her who he is, take that risk, live like a regular human being first, and be Superman second, because that's the only way that he can make sure that Superman doesn't turn into something more like Lex Luthor. And he has to nearly die in order to appreciate what he's here for. And couldn't we drive that point home better? And wouldn't it be cool if we actually sympathized with Dark Superman more, especially with Bruce Timm talking in the commentary about how that's not really the bad guy. Okay, well, it is. You didn't get us there.
Yeah, okay, Daredevil.
And so, yeah, so what if they had a big team up at the end of the movie, and this would be kind of typical, but then Dark Superman could just have, like, the big self-sacrifice thing.
Yeah, like, he gets killed by Doomsday.
Yeah. And then you have an actual Death of Superman there. That'd be cool.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, it's not brilliant or nothing, but I think it would, I say I'm rewriting the movie, that actually enhances the ideas that are already here. There. So I think I maybe just improved, or if they'd done that, that could have improved what they're trying to get at. Mm-hmm. Okay, I just made both of my major points all at once, so you have the floor now, sir.
Well, my idea of Lex killing Superman over and over again makes the movie better because it's more entertaining. And it hits that dark thing without being try-hard. That scene with the cat, I think, is super awkward.
Yeah.
I don't know, his acting's real weird in it, and, like, the shots of him, like, Blofeld scratching the cat's real weird.
Really, everything from there on is very, very awkward.
Yeah, like, this scene of him walking down the street even is just awkward. Like, that's how I would describe this movie. It's just, this film is awkward.
I don't understand the logistics of everything he does in the hair salon, where he's going to go in and
no sense.
Take out his, like, Suicide Squad, brain bomb that Lex has put in him. And, like, is Superman able to dig into his own cranium like this?
Is Superman able to X-ray things through a mirror? Wouldn't his X-ray vision just see through the mirror?
When he gets into... And I'm not responding to that because I just agree. These are all questions that I've also had. When he... And again, this is all just for shock factor. We couldn't do this on TV. We can do it now. When he gets into...
Terminator for some reason.
I'm sorry.
go to like a Terminator place, like out of nowhere.
That's true. When he gets into his own head like that, like, I'm questioning in the first place whether his own body might not be too strong where he himself could even get in it like that. I don't know. I guess he could. But then...
Well, his heat vision, I wouldn't think would be able to cut through it that quickly or like that easily.
But then the bigger thing is... Okay, how do scissors do anything? What are you doing with the scissors?
I think the scissors, it's literally just he's using that to pull it out. Like he's almost using the scissors as tweezers.
Oh, he's not cutting anything.
He's not cutting anything. He's just putting them in. But it's also like a hole that's like this big in his head. So how did the scissors fit in? I don't know. There's a lot of questions in that scene.
Yeah. The biggest problem with the storytelling approach with this movie is that it's all about... almost every scene is we have a specific situation that is supposed to illustrate a larger point, and that's supposed to be enough, right? So with the cat scene, it's this represents the fascist totalitarian direction that Superman could go. With Jimmy Olsen, it's his whole subplot represents how the larger world is feeling about Superman. And it's just an attitude problem. Like, it's good to have specific examples that illustrate larger points, but I don't think those larger points always come across as the problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with the cat thing, too, I think it's also specifically going to Donner, where it's like, look at the dark version of this scene.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Something that weirdly dates this movie more for me now is, I don't know if you've seen this, but the first Adam West 60s Batman cartoon movie that they did, Return of the Caped Crusaders, does all of this way better.
Okay, I know what you're talking about, because it does like the dark Batman thing.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Is there anybody on the planet that actually bought for any amount of time that Lois was, like so defeated that she was just gonna let Lex take advantage of her in that scene? No. Including Lex, like, is he that stupid that he couldn't tell that he was walking into a seduction trap? Like, pretty obvious.
Clancy Brown Lex wouldn't fall for that. That's all I'm saying. No, but with your Dark Superman thing too, not only is that Batman movie the better version of it, but I will also make the terrible stance that I think Dark Superman and Superman 3 is a better Dark Superman than this is. And that's the only good thing in that movie. But
what's so strange is they're skirting around Nuclear Man pretty hard in this.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Especially because you got like the whole Lex Luthor clone part.
The cringiest moment in the whole movie for me, maybe, is when Jimmy Olsen looks at one of these fetuses and says, "Yummy."
You said it exactly as he did. Like it was.
I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Why would you even say that? I think the problem is the animation, because is the model there, because maybe the idea is supposed to be he doesn't know what he's looking at and he's just grossed out by it, so he says that. But if you saw what was clearly a human fetus, the last word that would come to your brain is yummy. How are you thinking about food at a time like this? I get that it's sarcasm, but it's gross. Why would anyone say that?
See, this is why Zack Snyder was right in just killing Jimmy Olsen. No, like everything else in this movie, it's just awkward.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just awkward. I feel like characters in general are dumbed down too much in this movie, especially compared to how they acted in the Timverse. Mm-hmm. Like, Clone Superman here in a little bit is going to be standing outside of a red sun box with kryptonite in it that Lex is trying to lure him into. And they brought this up in the commentary, but I had thought of this before. He could have just heat visioned him. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand why he tries to kill. Well, I guess it's just so that at the end of the movie he can survive, even though there's no way he would have survived that.
No, and I think it's real cheap, and like this isn't connected to anything. Just kill him off.
Yeah.
But also, okay, like how does all this clone stuff work? Like, did he just have a vat of one, and then after that he made all these other ones? Like, how does that work? Like, why does he only have one, but then he has all of these just sitting there?
Yeah, is the idea that he's got to distract the city by making them think that Superman's come back and then put them in a false sense of security, and then he's just going to overrun them with an army? Like, why not just overrun them with an army in the first place? Like, how does it help him? I never thought of this. How does
This is why he should just be killing Superman over and over again, because he already has all these clones.
How does it help him that everyone thinks that Superman is alive when his plot is basically just world domination?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing three-dimensional chess about this plot.
No, this Lex is real stupid. Even here he's real stupid. Like, why would evil Superman fall for this? Like,
yeah. And it's supposed to, we're supposed to think that, you know, Dark Superman is being really smart here, where, oh, he didn't walk into the, you know, red sun room, but he didn't even have to do this either.
yeah, no, he could, like you said, he could have heat visioned him. I thought he was gonna throw Lex into space, and I was like, that's gonna be awesome. And
Oh,
then,
what he should have done, yeah, no, they could have bookended it from, or made it a callback from the way Superman kills Doomsday. And the first act is he just flies the box down and creates a shockwave with it.
yeah, and I mean, he basically does that, except it killed Doomsday, but not Lex.
Well, he doesn't fly him into space, and then he just tosses the box.
Yeah, but it's high up. And he goes through a building and hits the ground.
AMC, did either of you recognize the animated series Kryptonite suit in the background of the Fortress of Solitude? Yeah, they put a few kind of nods to things in the Fortress. The robot that everybody's familiar with from the Fleischer cartoons is back there.
Yeah.
It's fun when you do Easter eggs like that, but it's like the problem with how empty the city is, where the fortress is so sparse, there's nothing in it, that stuff stands out like a sore thumb. And so it's like, oh, cool, references. Like, I can't even feel impressed with myself for noticing them, because that's all that's here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I don't like about that.
I agree. I didn't know that Kryptonian suit, so I didn't know that, but I did catch the Fleischer robots.
That shot of him in the lightning is pretty cool.
It is cool, yeah. No, there's some moments where like the animation's really cool. Like there's a shot coming up with the planes that's really cool.
Tom, $5 super chat. Man of Steel had an ad for Gillette razors. Why are we talking about this? And he used his heat rays reflected off the razor to cut his beard. So maybe that's a stretch. I don't think it has. Oh, I see what you're saying.
I still remember that ad where it was like, a man of steel needs a razor.
Yeah,
of steel.
I see what you're saying.
I wish I didn't remember that.
Well, you remember in Superman 4 where you had the strand of hair that could lift, that could hang on to 1,000 pounds, but you just take a pair of scissors and cut it?
Was bolt cutters.
Oh, that's true. Okay, that's much better.
I also love that his annoying nephew, Lex's annoying nephew in that movie, Lenny Luthor, eventually became CW Lex.
I know, it's amazing. That is the silliest stunt casting they probably ever did, and there was a lot of it.
That is like the most CW thing I've ever heard.
I do kind of like the distinction in the lines here, where the soldiers are realizing how scary a fascist Superman is, where one of them says, well, we can't do this, we can't kill Superman, and then the one next to him says, you're right, we can't kill Superman, like, we're all gonna die. That's a nice bit of dialogue.
Yeah, that's a nice moment.
Superman in the scope, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah. No, like I said, some of the animation here is really cool. We're like almost at that plane shot that I remember being really cool.
Now, this may not be fair, but it is possible, Austin, that what we're detecting here is a difference in qualities between our three directors.
That is true. Yeah.
Where, like,
This is
Bruce
probably
Timm's
around when
section, we're
over.
seeing the coolest stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting more creative with the action. Like, nothing in that Doomsday fight had like any shots that were as cool as some of this is.
Now, I'll disagree with you a little bit. I think there's some neat stuff in that.
Fair enough.
I do appreciate the bit with Doomsday pushing Superman's head in the train. That looks pretty cool.
That's fine. Yeah.
More of it for me is just it was difficult to be invested in any of that action because I didn't buy some of the choices he was making.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, when you're shooting things from that far away, a flash doesn't really do anything. As a professional photographer, you should know that.
You should know that. Well, he
I like
just
how
has
we
to
use the color.
keep his camera on the action. So apparently he's got a kryptonite gun because of the huge gun that Black Costume Superman has in the book. And it's like this giant 90s like bazooka thing.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. It probably came with 18 pouches.
And then here he's got this little kryptonite gun, and he fires it once and then he loses it right away, which is cool for the sake of the stakes of it, I suppose. What I don't like is this bit here where Lois says it's not very Superman-like that he would carry a gun. That pays off in no way whatsoever. Like, we're not saying anything at all about Superman's character, how maybe he's changed, how maybe we're supposed to be worried that he's come back kind of darker or willing to, do harsher things than he would have done in the past. Because right after this, I mean, it's really just he's fighting a clone of himself. How else are you gonna fight him but with kryptonite? Like that. It's like that line is supposed to make us question his ethics for no reason at all. Because then you get to the end of this, and she goes, "How do I know you're Superman?" And then they make out, and she's like, "Oh, okay, I believe you now. You're Superman."
Yeah, but for all she knows, he could have used his mind-altering kiss power.
And she still would have every reason to not totally trust him. But we're doing that sappy thing where, but they're intimate and they love each other. So if she kisses him, then she'll know for sure. Mm-hmm. It's just too juvenile of a script for the material they're trying here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. It's weird because you get like he comes back in a black suit and he's got a gun, and then that doesn't really have anything else to say with that. Even you get that moment where Superman goes, like,
it's this provocative image for no reason. It's kind of shock for shock.
Yeah, and then Superman goes like, I don't know if anyone will be able to see me as I was after Dark Superman did what he did, and the crowd immediately loves him.
Yeah. Well,
it's why even mention it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like in the same breath we keep saying, this is more grounded, it's more like the real world, it's not so black and white. You've got to work harder if you're Superman to make people trust you because your power really is scary if you're compromised or if you one day decide that you don't want to be as altruistic as you're being. In the same breath, you also have everybody go, "Yay, it's Superman!"
Yeah, it's
You're
it's
right. Why bring it up?
It's almost like it becomes Batman the Imposter for a second, where it's like, there's no going back after this because your name is sullied. Never mind. Like it's
but
really
also
weird.
Even if we ended off on the note, on a more sour note, right? Of after this happened, we can't trust Superman. I don't even buy that, because all Lois has to do is publish an article that says he was cloned. The clone only had what ideas and air quote morality Lex Luthor programmed it with. So how easy would it be to convince everyone, and also it happens to be true, that that guy's not Superman in the first place? So how does that have any bearing on how people would look at the real one?
Yeah. Yeah, and a clone of Superman's not that crazy to imagine. There's like a giant gray Spike Man earlier.
Austin, he can do this all day.
I thought of that too.
I do kind of like the just the kind of turning it on its head visual of the good one is the black suit and the bad one is the suit that you're used to seeing.
Yeah, it's almost like a
just as an image, it's neat.
As an image, it's almost like a Batman Joker thing, right? Where like the dark one is the good guy.
Yes, that's a good call. I wish there was more visual contrast in this movie, and once again, I'm going to come off like I'm saying it's bad because it's not what the comics did, but like take the things from that would make this more effective. Why isn't that Doomsday fight in broad daylight like it is in the book? Because one of the things that always made that more impactful was you're used to seeing Superman, in the daylight, and he represents, hope and goodness and all of that, of course, and he's gonna be ripped apart in his element the way you're used to seeing him, like in the middle of Metropolis, a bright, happy, wholesome day, and it's like I use this word a lot, but like it's perverting everything that's wonderful about Superman visually. And this movie just puts it in at night, and then this last scene also looks like it's at night. It's apparently supposed to be actually just an overcast day, but it just looks like it's at night. Yeah. In the commentary, Tim talks about how, and this would have been a lot better. I mean, it wouldn't have fixed a lot of the problems I have with the movie, but originally the idea was Superman was going to take Superman was going to fly above the clouds and get recharged by the sun, and then they found out Superman Returns was doing that, so they couldn't do it.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah, I didn't realize this was supposed to be day. It's definitely overcast, but I assumed it was night.
There's just not enough contrast between the scenes.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, Superman and Metropolis, like, you think of Gotham as perpetually night and Metropolis as perpetually day.
Thematically, I just think it makes more sense if that opening scene is, or that opening fight with Doomsday is during the day, where it's like, oh, surely he's going to take him down. This is just a regular oh my god, no, he's dead. It'll never be the same. And then at the end, you have a big fight with Dark Superman in the dark, because if Superman loses, this represents the dystopian future we're looking at. It's kind of obvious.
Now that I'm thinking about it with the overcast thing, why didn't we do like a Lion King thing where it's raining through this and then he beats Dark Superman and the sun comes out?
Because that's harder to animate.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But that would have been great. I mean, look, we can't even populate the city with people or cars or anything.
That's true. It's all the T-posers. This kid smokes like 10 packs a day. I like the red one better.
The emotional stuff is very often just really unconvincing.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But yeah, so going back to what I said at the beginning, like as counterintuitive as it felt coming in, Superman and Lois are dating, but he is not telling her that he's Clark. When you get the whole arc of that, and you're using the pseudo death of Superman to like teach him what his place really should be in the world, and that he's got to be a man first before he's a god. Like, I really like that on paper. I think, like, the more I'm thinking about it.
I don't like the setup, but I like this payoff. I actually like this scene where she realizes that he finally said it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
I think it's a really weird kind of counterintuitive thing to do with Death of Superman. But if they don't want to, I guess what I'm saying is, if they don't want to tell that story and they're not interested in Death of Superman, they at least try to make it a character piece. So they're telling the kind of story they like to tell with that, and that's cool, except it's not brought enough to the fore all the way through. Like, it took me forever to realize that's what they were trying to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And cut this scene. Lex should be dead.
Yeah. Well, and also, they're not gonna make anything else in this continuity.
No, just own it. Like, this is it. Why do you need this? End bit?
It's a complete standalone.
Yeah.
But I'm sure what they're thinking is Lex is Superman's main villain. So even if we don't make any more, we need people to be left with the feeling that his arch nemesis is still around.
Like, there could be more. Yeah. But, like, if you're gonna do the more, like, in-your-face adult thing, like, just go for it, man. Like,
yeah. Matthew Bass, all the emotional moments fall flat in this. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least most of them do. I appreciate all the special thanks to every single creator that dealt with Death of Superman that you get at the end of this. By the way, I've mentioned this before, but in case this is the first time you're hearing me talk about this movie, the main reason to buy this disc is the really good featurette on the history of the Death of Superman comic. It's like an hour long, and it's a good deep dive in how that was conceptualized and put together, and then how big of a deal it was for the industry, and what it was like the day of when the book was sold, and how many copies it sold, and all of that. A lot of really good interviews with a lot of the writers and artists involved in that. And it's one of my favorite superhero documentary things.
Very cool.
That's the main reason I get this box out at all.
I just noticed the one person listed in storyboards is like the guy who directs most of these at this point. Like, he goes all the way back here.
I can't remember his name right off, but
it's like Sam Liu.
That's what I was. Yeah, okay, that is who I was thinking.
I'm not entirely sure.
I hesitate. Yeah, he took over.
Yeah,
after Bruce Timm left.
That's interesting that he's right here from the start, though.
That's true.
So that's cool.
But yeah, Jurgens and Louis Simonson and
Roger Stern.
All those, yeah.
The like 18 folks. People they listed as creating
Doomsday. Yeah.
That's really funny next to Superman too, where it's like Superman created by, 2 people. Doomsday created by him, her, for a character who doesn't speak.
Yeah, and even Jeanette Kahn got mentioned. That's cool. Let's go ahead and read some of these audience questions real quick that we didn't get to during the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Since, once again, we didn't have any tweet-length reviews, I thought we would just go ahead and knock some of these out at the end. AMC again, do either of you feel this version of Lex intentionally takes cues from the Smallville version, given his leaner build and the all-white wardrobe he's wearing? I hadn't had that thought, but that might have been a bit of an influence. But yeah, particularly with the white suit, because that was kind of popularized with the Vision in first season with President Lex. And of course, that show still has 3 more seasons after this, so like Rosenbaum hasn't quite left yet when this comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Or 3, maybe 4. This would have been during 6, I think.
Okay, so that's season 2001.
Yeah, that starts in 01, and this came out in 7.
Season 6 then, around there.
Jesse Surtees. Austin's not a Smallville guy, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Smallville, so.
If the two Death of Superman movies swapped release dates, but each retained certain attributes from the other, how would that impact the reception and execution of either movie? I mean, I think right away people would have appreciated, at least, diehard fans of that, going to something that was more reminiscent of what the actual books did. At the very least, having the four Supermen, if they'd done that first, because that was the big disappointment and complaint that I heard most when this came out, and I shared it, was just, oh, it's really lame. You distilled that all down to one guy. So, like, if somehow, I mean, it was part of a greater continuity, so it wouldn't have happened this way. But if somehow exactly that movie, with or without Reign of Superman, of the Superman, had come out instead of this, it probably would have been more well received. Because when it did come out, a lot of people did like it. I thought it was awful.
Okay,
honestly,
I thought everyone thought it was awful. So my reaction was, does this still exist now? If those two were released first, I don't know.
No, that's true. I mean, the question is kind of odd, because if that had been made, and especially as like the 2-part thing, where it's trying to cover as much of those books as it can.
Does it end up like Marvel?
I don't know why a more truncated version of it would eventually then come out. So it's kind of difficult to say what the reception would be to this a lot later, because this is too much a product of its time. So I don't know. Kind of a difficult question to answer.
Well, they both are at some degree, like very much. Yeah.
No, that's true. We'll get to those eventually, of course.
Yeah,
and I've only seen them once because they just. I actually think in a lot of ways this is even better than those are somehow.
I don't think this is awful. I just think it's kind of nothing. It's a little boring.
Again, I can't get my bias out of it. It's disappointing
you have that history with
as a Death of Superman fan, but I also think I would just be sort of like. I would sort of see it like you said, as kind of dull and nothing maybe if I hadn't read that material. Like, I don't know if I come into this and go, oh cool, what an interesting premise, you killed Superman, because they didn't, and he comes back fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. Like, it just doesn't feel like a big deal.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And you didn't make me feel enough for that clone. Like, the discussion that they have in the middle of the fight at the end is decent, but it just doesn't go far enough. It's kind of a little too late for me at that point. Like, he's sympathetic. I meant to mention this earlier. The clone is sympathetic to the point of he is trying really hard to be Superman. He just doesn't understand what that means. And then, at least narratively, that's cool, and it makes it a tighter story because he is the dark reflection of what Superman, could be if he wasn't careful. Where it's like he's trying to understand what his place is in the world, and that's the thing not to do. So that's at least all related. It's not like the clone has this totally other subplot. Like, he's a good villain in the sense that he is like the other side of the coin for our hero in some way.
No, he's like getting to see Spider-Man fight Black Suit Spider-Man.
Yeah. Except he's the one wearing the black suit.
Yeah.
Code Geese, do you think that Superman Doomsday tries too hard to be edgy in order to earn its PG-13 rating? Yes. And we kind of talked about that. Steven...
Are the other early ones as bad as this for that? Because I know...
some of them are, yeah.
About how quite a few of them have the forced language and whatnot, but this is really bad, every way.
I think a few of actually the New 52 inspired continuity is as bad or worse.
Mm-hmm. They go a little bit farther
at that, yeah. Or they're just trying too hard.
Oh, okay.
Especially once you get into. Because at least this was ostensibly about a character dying in a super violent way. You can see why the home video department pitched this to them, where they're like, well, just do Death of Superman, that's violent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But and I can't think of any great example right now because I'm rusty and it's been a while and I don't like a lot of these. But the New 52 inspired continuity would have movies that didn't have any inherently adult material in the premise, but then have just like eviscerations of characters. Like,
And I know you like this movie, but I've always heard that as a complaint against the Apocalypse War, the like, final movie they did.
that is definitely a problem with it, but it was so much more creative and fun than a lot of those other movies that I definitely like. No, it's flawed and it's not like one of my favorite of these or anything, but it was really fun to watch, which was shocking.
It's not Justice League War.
No, it's the antithesis to that as far as being engaging and fun to watch. The best of that, we're getting off the beat math here, but the best of that continuity, story-wise, is probably Teen Titans versus Justice League.
Oh, okay.
That movie was surprisingly good.
Yeah,
and that was the first time where I went, oh, wow, they can still write. I mean, they haven't proven that to us in like 5 years, but look, they wrote something that was pretty good.
Yeah, I've always heard that in Dark mentions like the kind of end all be all of that universe.
Well, and that's part of why that last movie, you just said the name of it, I can never remember it.
Apocalypse War.
Apocalypse War. That movie was basically Justice League Dark 2.
Well, it is Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, I think.
Oh, is that what they called it? And
I think so.
It is very in line and of the same quality that movie was. Unlike the follow-up to that Teen Titans movie, which was finally a Judas contract, and that was awful.
And that was could have been one of the first movies they did. Because that was like real early on that they were talking about doing Judas contract, and then it was in development hell and put in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, AMC, I didn't bring up Hell the Pages because I couldn't remember if that was set in the same continuity. Maybe it is supposed to be that. I couldn't remember.
It is. There's like a big revelation in that about...
Now you say that, I remember that.
Yeah.
It's all coming back to me. A Matthew Bass Apocalypse War feels like it was written by an edgy 14-year-old. I hated it. I mean, a lot of those did, but, you know, it was a more fun version of that, I thought. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they made 3 of the most boring Batman films I've ever seen.
Oh, my God. You're not wrong. Austin.
Yes.
How would you rate Superman Doomsday?
God, how will I rate this? Okay.
We're going to need to write these down somewhere. We should probably sit down and do that afterwards.
I will go with a high villain.
Yeah, that's just where I am also.
Yeah.
I can't quite go to hero with this. Even though, like I said, I had a better watch with it than I have in a long time, but you'll notice I still was, mostly criticizing it.
I also had a better viewing last night than I did tonight. I feel like it dragged real hard in places.
That is a long 75 minutes.
Yeah, and it felt like twice as long as Batman Beyond.
Which I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. Part of the problem with this is and it's not really their fault because they've only got so much money to make these, and of course they can't go past a certain runtime. But in adapting this kind of material and having to truncate it as hard as they did, but then also telling a different story that wasn't that inspired, like it's too short, but it watches too long.
Yeah, and there's just certain things like if it's gonna be this short, cut the Jimmy Olsen stuff too. Like cut anything that feels like filler and like focus on the important things.
Yeah, exactly. When Bruce Timm in his commentary says there was no way in like a 75 minute movie, however long this is, to adapt the 4 Supermen, I do not agree. I just don't. I think you could have.
Yeah,
you're not going to tell exactly that story, and you might have to come up with new things for some of those characters to do. But like we've seen short movies juggle a bunch of characters well before. They don't have to have a ton of screen time. They don't even have to have the deepest of characterizations necessarily. Just get Superman killed by Doomsday in the first 15, 20 minutes. And again, that is tough when it's not in a continuity you're already familiar with, which is why in a perfect world you just make it part of the DCAU, but then you already did that crazy lobotomized Doomsday, so it's kind of difficult to do that. But like, all things being equal, forget for a second the introducing Superman and killing him in the same movie problem. If we can ignore that for a second, if you can kill Superman in your first 20 minutes, and then one of the next things that happens is Cyborg Superman shows up to Lois and says, "No, I'm the real deal," and then you just make him the villain of the third act, I think you could do it. It would be too short. It would be truncated. There's no way you could do it perfectly, but you could do it.
I will make the argument that I think you could have done just one and made it work. They just didn't. And then with your two-parter years later, you can do all four. But you could have done all four, but like it would have definitely been truncated. And I feel like you could do one and still make it work. They just didn't.
Yeah, I guess the reason I wanted to see that done, and again now we have, and it was bad, but
One day.
But that was the big novelty from that book. Like, that was kind of the premise of it, was here's these different aspects of Superman represented in different bodies, and you put them all together and you still wouldn't get like what Superman was all about. And the whole world without a Superman idea was let's at first kind of examine how empty the world feels without that ideal, and then let's have a bunch of characters attempt to replace him, and here's why that can't be done. And so the reason I didn't want to see it done with one was because the whole idea was there are several and none of them are actually him. I mean, that's what was cool about it.
No, absolutely. I agree with what you're saying about it as an adaptation. I just think like with what they have, there are ways you can make it interesting.
No, you're right. And I guess we're having kind of two different arguments at that point, because I have a hard time not coming at this as adaptation, but like I said earlier, with just what they decided to do, you can still tell a better story with that.
Yeah,
certainly. And I still think they should have just taken Doomsday down at the end.
But the real question, Cap, is this at the end of the day the best Death of Superman adaptation? At this point,
kind of.
And the SNES game does not count.
I was gonna say, because that's
I know you were.
More like, no, I wasn't gonna say that. Yeah, I mean, I've spent 5 hours talking about BVS, so I'm not gonna do that again right now anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's slim pickings.
Well, okay, think about it this way: you get four really bad, or like four Supermen in a really bad two-parter. You get one bad Superman in a very boring, not very good film, and you get no evil Superman in a 4-hour / also 2-hour mess.
Well, the problem is that's not even an adaptation of this so much as just sort of Superman 75 for 10 minutes.
Exactly.
So it's not even doing the same thing. Yeah,
it's like when Into Darkness does Wrath of Khan with the death of Spike.
That's great. No, I just have to cop out and say there is no good adaptation of this, and there probably never will be. And I don't want to see it attempted again. Like, yeah, we're past it now. Like, we need to move on. As much as I love Death of Superman, I'm not interested in adaptation anymore. Like, I'm good. Matthew Bay says Hereafter is a way better interpretation of that story. It's not the same thing though.
Is that I'm not even sure.
That's a Justice League episode.
Oh, okay. And with Gunn running the DCU, you're more likely to get the Death of Superman and All-Star than you are Death of Superman.
Oh, that's a good point too.
So, yeah, it's the ship sailed, I'm afraid.
I still say that and I mean, I realize it got awful. I liked it okay first season. I feel like the Supergirl TV show had the chance to do the closest to a definitive version of this that we would have had, and they just didn't. Before they cast a Superman, when we thought that they wouldn't, I said a lot that I would have loved to have seen a full season arc where in the opening you kill Superman off screen because they had to do things, off screen with Superman, and then Supergirl has to, come in and take up the slack, and then you have her deal with the four Supermen. And it could have been really cool. And they adapted a lot of things from Death of Superman in that show, including the most hilarious version of Cyborg Superman ever, where you have a black man that doesn't even remotely look like Superman, who's not wearing a Superman costume at all, look directly into the camera and say, "I'm Cyborg Superman!"
Yeah, the first shot of that show could have been the cape, right? Like the Death of Superman cape shot.
Could have been cool. Could have been really cool. Now, this movie also, I just had this thought. It didn't even really have to show us the death of Superman. It could have just done it like in opening credits, and then the whole movie could have been Reign of the Superman, and then you'd have your 70 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, that gets weird if it's not in a pre-established continuity. You could also...
I feel like that's an awkward first film for your line.
No, wait, but this was already an awkward first film for your line.
Touche.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I want to say thanks a ton to all of our $10 patrons, our Patreon producers. You guys are wonderful. And thanks to all of our patrons in the first place. But one of the perks that you get for becoming a Superhero Rewind producer is you get your name read at the end of every episode, and with gusto, as Austin likes to say. And you also can become a part of the Superhero Rewind Discord and watch superhero movies with me and chat about superhero movies every month. And lots of other cool perks there as well. Thanks a bunch to specifically David Crabtree, One Reply, Bill Mills, who's been with us all night tonight, Chewbacca's Lover, Elliot Slater, Goofster123, Hayden Spring, who we've also seen tonight, Joe Turner, Joshua Gilisano, who gave me a $10 super chat that we answered well after and didn't even realize it. Thanks, buddy. MattBat68, Michael Martin, SS Jerry, Super Billy, Thomas Edgehill, Adam March, Checkers, The Inventor, Damon Begay, Hot Soup, Jacob Schneider, Jonathan Campbell, Justin Hayes. He was here tonight, too. That's Bag Studios. Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody. Oh, actually, he wasn't here, but we read a comment from him, didn't we? Michael Austin.
You just doxed him.
That's like backwards doxing, though, because, like, I said his real name, but then, like, which I say every episode, but then I just told you what his...
What his username is.
I don't think that's doxing. I mean, that's right. That's the opposite. Maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Whatever. Miguel Rodriguez.
Sorry.
This guy, TheDayGhost, Unknown Passenger, Wendell Jones, and Zach. We will see you again in 2 weeks, folks. And the next one is going to be a requested review from David Crabtree, who joined the...
Oh, is that what we're doing next?
Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and do that next. Just go ahead and knock it out. We kicked around some other things, but... yeah. I mean, unless you think the Punisher thing is time-sensitive enough, you want to go ahead and get that knocked out.
I mean, it's up to you. It doesn't bother me.
We could go ahead and do that first, because I mean, like, I get why you wanted to do that. I mean, it's not a bad idea. You're going to have more to say about that than me.
So you push the sex, you're like, I don't want to talk
about No, that's okay. No, we can. No, you're right. We can go ahead and do that.
No, I don't care, Kev. Whichever you want to do.
I'm changing things on the fly. David, apologies. We will do yours right after that. So we're going to go ahead and do Punisher Warzone next. Because, right? Is that the one?
Yeah, because Ray Stevenson just died,
Because
and
Ray
I
Stevenson
suggested
just
doing
passed
that.
away, and I haven't seen that in a billion years, so that'll be interesting. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll go ahead and tackle Masters of the Universe, which is the movie that David Crabtree asked for on the new Rewind request tier. And you can join that at the $30 tier if you're so inclined, and we'll do it, 2 or 3 reviews, commentaries after this one, or after when you asked for that. Sorry, it's like 2 a.m. Anyway, yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and do Warzone next time. And sorry, we had been kicking that back and forth, and I kind of forgot about it. So yeah,
No, it's okay. Like I said, I was fine either way. I was just like, I don't know.
we could do what we did tonight and work them both in, I guess. But
Oh God, that would be an insane watch party.
it really would. Anyway, thanks again, folks. We sure appreciate it. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost. And also, real quick plug for what we're going to do next week, which won't be part of the Rewind commentary project, but we're going to do a watch party. Speaking of watch parties, on the pilot for the 90s Flash show, the 2-hour pilot. I've wanted to do something on that forever, and we've got the Flash movie coming. The Flash TV show just ended, so I thought it would be a really good time to go back to the 90s and do the first live-action adaptation of the Flash. And Austin's never seen it, so that will be a lot of fun. And Austin, it's up to you whether you want to watch it ahead of time or watch it for the first time for that party. But
Yeah, I'm not sure like what that show's like whether that's something funnier to react to or something more to know.
yeah, I'm gonna say a bit of both.
A bit of both. Okay. I can watch it beforehand.
That first episode is definitely longer than it needs to be. Like, it's padded.
Oh, okay.
It's not bad. It's just it's a little padded, and it's got definitely a cheese factor.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, I know the prequel, the pilot's where it's trying to be 89 too, so it's got like that going on.
Yes, which is one of the really interesting things about it, and it's Shirley Walker doing the score.
Oh, okay, cool.
But anyway, thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you again next time. Bye, folks.
See ya.